We'll bring in Wolf and Gloria to talk a little bit about it. As soon as the president goes to the podium, of course, we'll take him live. But I want to ask you guys here, we've seen a different side to the president lately, just over the last couple of days. It is a much more emotional president. We have even seen him crying as he talked to his campaign staffers. If we have some time, let's play that clip real quick.
What you guys have done means that the work that I'm doing is important. And I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of all of you. And what you just done.
Wolf, what do you make of this? In all my years of covering Obama, I've never seen any kind of anything that was close to that kind of expression and emotion here. Do you think that he is allowing himself, now that he's going to be a second-termer, to be more vulnerable, more expressive?
Yeah, it's a nice touch to see. He's normally very, very cool, but in this particular case, he got very emotional. Totally understandable. He's just been reelected president of the United States for another 4 years. Just before the end, when there were a couple other moments, we did see him get a little bit teary-eyed, a little bit weepy right at the end of his campaign. There was one event, his final event day, he got a little misty-eyed. I remember 4 years ago, Suzanne, you were there when he lost his grandmother. We saw him cry. So it's not the first time, but it's very rare that we see it. Maybe he was channeling in a little bit of John Boehner, who's very emotional all the time, and we've seen him weeping on several occasions over the years. Gets very, very emotional, which is, as I say, totally understandable. He's going to have to change some of his sort of outreach, if you will, if he's going to be successful in these next 4 years, and he's looking ahead to his presidential legacy. He's going to have to reach out to members of Congress, invite them over, schmooze with them a little bit, Democrats and Republicans. He's going to have to start making phone calls. He's going to have to do what Bill Clinton did in his second term, become much more accessible. Now, this goes against the grain of what he did in the first 4 years. He's relatively private. When he goes and plays golf, he plays with his buddies. When he hangs out at night, he wants to hang out, totally understandable, with his wife and 2 daughters. But he's going to have to get a little bit more open if he's going to want these last 4 years, and every day in these last 4 years, these second 4 years, will be critical if he's going to succeed in having a very, very successful second term. So he's got to change his strategy a little bit.
You know what I also think is rather telling, Wolf, is the fact that you see him tear up. I mean, it's been twice in a week or so.
2-minute
that
warning.
This is
a 2-minute warning.
Oh, we're getting a 2-minute warning here. We are told the president's going to start speaking in about 2 minutes or so. We had just heard that from the announcement there. But I thought it was interesting, Wolf, the fact that this has become a front-page news story, if you will, that this is a viral video, that the American people are so hungry to see the president emotional and passionate and really expressing, I think, what so many people were looking for and looking from him over the last 4 years, and now a new sense of the president being able to do just that. I want to bring in Allie and Christine to talk a little bit about what we expect to hear from the president when it comes to the Bush-era tax cuts that will expire, and the importance here, the important distinction the president's going to make in terms of who he believes should be taxed and who he believes should not be taxed and can't afford to at this time. Allie, do you want to jump in here? Or?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking me the easy question, because that's the one piece of information that the president has been remarkably consistent upon through this fiscal cliff discussion. He feels that 98% of households should not have their taxes increased, and those at the highest end should. And,
all right, we're going to have to cut you there, leave it there. The president taking to the podium here in the East Room of the White House. Let's listen in.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Everybody, please have a seat. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Now that those of us on the campaign trail have had a chance to get a little sleep, it's time to get back to work, and there is plenty of work to do. As I said on Tuesday night, the American people voted for action, not politics as usual. You elected us to focus on your jobs, not ours. And in that spirit, I've invited leaders of both parties to the White House next week so we can start to build consensus around the challenges that we can only solve together. And I also intend to bring in business and labor and civic leaders from all across the country here to Washington to get their ideas and input as well. You know, at a time when our economy is still recovering from the Great Recession, our top priority has to be jobs and growth. That's the focus of the plan that I talked about during the campaign. It's a plan to reward small businesses and manufacturers that create jobs here, not overseas. It's a plan to give people the chance to get the education and training that businesses are looking for right now. It's a plan to make sure this country is a global leader in research and technology and clean energy, which will attract new companies and high-wage jobs to America. It's a plan to put folks back to work, including our veterans, rebuilding our roads and our bridges and other infrastructure. And it's a plan to reduce our deficit in a balanced and responsible way. Now, our work is made that much more urgent because at the end of this year, we face a series of deadlines that require us to make major decisions about how to pay our deficit down. Decisions that will have a huge impact on the economy and the middle class, both now and in the future. Last year, I worked with Democrats and Republicans to cut $1 trillion worth of spending that we just couldn't afford. I intend to work with both parties to do more, and that includes making reforms that will bring down the cost of health care so we can strengthen programs like Medicaid and Medicare for the long haul. But, as I've said before, we can't just cut our way to prosperity. If we're serious about reducing the deficit, we have to combine spending cuts with revenue. And that means asking the wealthiest Americans to pay a little more in taxes. That's how we did it. That's how we did it in the 1990s when Bill Clinton was president. That's how we can reduce the deficit while still making the investments we need to build a strong middle class and a strong economy. That's the only way we can still afford to train our workers or help our kids pay for college or make sure that good jobs in clean energy or high-tech manufacturing don't end up in countries like China. Now, already I've put forward a detailed plan that allows us to make these investments while reducing our deficit by $4 trillion over the next decade. I want to be clear. I'm not wedded to every detail of my plan. I'm open to compromise. I'm open to new ideas. I'm committed to solving our fiscal challenges. But I refuse to accept any approach that isn't balanced. I'm not going to ask students and seniors and middle-class families to pay down the entire deficit while people like me making over $250,000 aren't asked to pay a dime more in taxes. I'm not going to do that. And I just want to point out, this was a central question during the election. It was debated over and over again. And on Tuesday night, we found out that the majority of Americans agree with my approach. And that includes Democrats, independents, and a lot of Republicans across the country, as well as independent economists and budget experts. That's how you reduce the deficit, with a balanced approach. So our job now is to get a majority in Congress to reflect the will of the American people. And I believe we can get that majority. I was encouraged to hear Speaker Boehner agree that tax revenue has to be part of this equation. So I look forward to hearing his ideas when I see him next week. And let me make one final point that every American needs to hear. Right now, if Congress fails to come to an agreement on an overall deficit reduction package by the end of the year, everybody's taxes will automatically go up on January 1st. Everybody's, including the 98% of Americans who make less than $250,000 a year. And that makes no sense. It would be bad for the economy and would hit families that are already struggling to make ends meet. Now, fortunately, we shouldn't need long negotiations or drama to solve that part of the problem. While there may be disagreement in Congress over whether or not to raise taxes on folks making over $250,000 a year, nobody, not Republicans, not Democrats, want taxes to go up for folks making under $250,000 a year. So let's not wait. Even as we're negotiating a broader deficit reduction package, let's extend the middle-class tax cuts right now. Let's do that right now. That one step would give millions of families, 98% of Americans, and 97% of small businesses the certainty that they need going into the new year. It would immediately take a huge chunk of the economic uncertainty off the table, and that'll lead to new jobs and faster growth. Business will know that consumers, they're not going to see a big tax increase. They'll know that most small businesses won't see a tax increase. And so a lot of the uncertainty that you're reading about, that will be removed. In fact, the Senate has already passed a bill doing exactly this. So all we need is action from the House. And I've got the pen, ready to sign the bill right away. I'm ready to do it. I'm ready to do it. You know, the American people understand that we're going to have differences and disagreements in the months to come. They get that. But on Tuesday, they said loud and clear that they won't tolerate dysfunction. They won't tolerate politicians who view compromise as a dirty word. Not when so many Americans are still out of work. Not when so many families and small business owners are still struggling to pay the bills. What the American people are looking for is cooperation. They're looking for consensus. They're looking for common sense. Most of all, they want action. I intend to deliver for them in my second term, and I expect to find willing partners in both parties to make that happen. So let's get to work. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
All right. I've been watching President Obama in the East Room there. Very brief remarks, really no more than 5 minutes or so outlining his plan. Didn't get any new details on it, but a couple things that struck me that stood out. I want to bring in our panel, our correspondents, for some post-game analysis. Obviously, Wolf Blitzer and Gloria Borger out of Washington. Our chief White House correspondent, Jessica Yellen, as soon as she gets set up there in the East Room. Also, our economic experts, Ali Velshi and Christine Romans, and the money team here. Wolf, I want to start off with you here. Two things that stood out. One of the things that he said was that something that could be done right away, that there was a sense of urgency here, is that you could go ahead and extend the middle-class tax cuts right now. That is what the president said. We heard from Speaker Boehner, who said, look, nothing's going to get done right away. Let's wait till 2013. Nothing's going to happen in the lame duck Congress. It seems to me as if he's taking on the speaker right away that we need to get something done in the next 8 weeks.
Well, the president, the Democrats have long said, extend the tax cuts for the middle class, for those individuals earning under $200,000 a year, families earning under $250,000 a year. Extend those Bush tax cuts immediately and then worry about the wealthiest Americans later. Problem with that, and the president and the Democrats have proposed that in the past, and the Senate passed that in the past. The Republicans, especially in the House of Representatives, see that as leverage because they don't want tax rates to go up on anyone, including the wealthiest Americans. They say that would undermine economic recovery. You don't raise taxes during tough economic times. What I did hear, Suzanne, that was a little bit encouraging, not only the words about the president saying he wants to open up to compromise, he's ready to open up to new ideas. What he did say, and I wrote these words down precisely because I think they're significant. He says he wants the wealthiest Americans to pay a little more in taxes. He didn't say flatly, and I think this potentially could be significant. He didn't say flatly, I want to see their tax rates go up from 35%, which is right now, to 39.6%, which was the tax rate during the Clinton administration. What Boehner says, he's open to eliminating loopholes and exemptions, deductions for the wealthiest Americans also. So if they can find a way that wealthy Americans would pay more by eliminating some of the deductions and exemptions, the loopholes that they're eligible for, without necessarily raising that 35% tax rate. That may be an opening for a compromise between Boehner and the Republicans on one side and the president and the Democrats on another side. If the president holds firm to raising the rate from 35 to 39.6%, I don't know if he's going to have the votes in the House of Representatives to get that through.